It was a cold and snowy night on January 19, 1928, when thousands thronged to Mansfield's new $500,000 Ohio Theater for its first show. The grand Baroque-style theater was beautiful. Tickets were 50 cents, and the opening day crowds were so large that an apology to the thousands turned away was placed in the Mansfield News the next day. The new theater had a magnificent $40,000 Kimball organ. The beautiful sounds from this three-manual 10-rank instrument amazed the public and accompanied silent pictures on the screen for years to come. The 20 years that followed that opening day were profitable, but with the coming of television, the theater slowly fell into disrepair and was finally shut down in 1979 by police because it had been turned into an X-rated theater. On August 18, 1980, through the generosity of an anonymous benefactor, the Ohio Theater was purchased and became part of the Madison Cultural Arts Incorporated, a nonprofit organization. After massive cleanup efforts and the relighting of the chandelier, the first order of business was to change the name to the Renaissance Theater. However, a key element was missing. The original organ had long since been removed and sold. The founding executive director of the Renaissance Theater, Rick Sowash, himself a pianist and composer, knew the importance of a theater organ to make this old theater complete. He arranged a bus tour for a group of influential Mansfielders to see other theaters in Columbus, Cleveland, Lorain, and Marion, each of which had a theater organ. Fran Rupp was on that original bus trip. She and husband Warren's interest motivated Rick to organize a theater organ search committee. Brenda Golbus agreed to chair a committee of 10 people meeting monthly. Over the next 3 years, the organ committee demonstrated that it had all the knowledge, skills, and dedication to finish the enormous task of finding a theater organ, as well as helping with the installation. Members identified the names of professional installers and the names of professional theater organists. Committee members Virginia and Don White were subscribers to theater organ magazines, where ads for instruments were placed. Gary Garrett also knew theater organists. Ruth Hamblin and Mary Delp came to meetings and gave moral support. Bob Walsh shared valuable information about theater organs. Bill Morrison had played the original Ohio theater organ and knew the size of instrument needed. Jack Kindler, William Rentella, and Matt Madden understood the electronic components of the instrument. There would be constant need for their expertise. Neil Kraft was a church organist and knew what to look for in a console. Dennis James, the resident theater organist at the Ohio Theater in Columbus, was contacted for his advice. Bill Morrison, Jack Kindler, and Jim Ackley could all play a theater organ, which meant that the instrument would be played by local organists after the installation. Dave Junkin, who was in the process of writing a 3-volume encyclopedia of the American theater organ, along with Neil Kraft and Charlie Kegg of the Shantz Pipe Organ Company in Orville, traveled to Tennessee and Pennsylvania to view theater organs that were for sale. With all these meetings and activities going on, there was still one major problem. There were no funds. About 3 years after the committee began its meetings, the Fran and Warren Rupp Foundation generously agreed to purchase an organ for a cost of about $35,000. One was located in Warren, Michigan. The organ would have to be dismantled, moved to Mansfield, restored, and installed. A major undertaking for a committee that had never done this work before. Charlie Kegg advised the committee to hire experts for the technical restoration. The foundation agreed to donate an additional $70,000 for shipping, renovation, installation, and voicing of the instrument. Ken Crome of Los Angeles was hired for the job. He had a reputation as an excellent theater organ restorer and installer. Ken came to the theater to see the space available for the pipes. He then traveled to Warren, Michigan to see the theater organ there. However, a question about ownership and other problems forced the committee to decide not to purchase this instrument. Soon after Ken returned to Los Angeles, he called with news of an instrument that might be appropriate for the Renaissance Theater. This organ was in storage just a few miles from his studio. So the committee put all its faith in Ken and purchased the organ sight unseen. A theater organ in the Renaissance Theater was soon to become a reality. The organ turned out to have a famous history of its own, linking it to Hollywood. A Wurlitzer Opus 2022 with 3 manuals and 20 ranks, it was built for the Warner Brothers Vitaphone Company and originally installed in Hollywood's Sunset Boulevard studio in 1929. After Sunset Boulevard, the organ was moved to radio station KNW, a CBS affiliate. In the 1930s, millions of Americans who listened to the Amos and Andy radio program heard Gaylord Carter open this program by playing a piece called The Perfect Song on This Very Instrument. The organ was used for many recordings and radio shows throughout the 30s and 40s. In 1955, Joe Kearns, best known for his roles as the vault keeper on the Jack Benny radio show and as Mr. Wilson on TV's Dennis the Menace series, purchased the organ. Mr. Kearns actually built his Hollywood home around this instrument. The magnificent grille in the home concealed the giant organ chambers. After Kearns' death, the residence was leased by the late Robert Carson, who founded a recording firm. For the next 20 years, the organ was played on recordings by some of the biggest names in theater organ circles. When Carson died, the organ was purchased by Russ Nelson, a wealthy Santa Ana contractor who put the instrument in storage. He later sold it to Ron Walls, an organ enthusiast. Ron, with the help of Ken Crome, sold the organ to the Renaissance Theater. In 1984, the formalities of purchasing this prized historical theater organ were finalized. A meeting was held at Warren Rupp's Pump Company between members of the Rupp Foundation and the Renaissance Theater. Fran and Warren Rupp and Don Smith, attorney for the Fran and Warren Rupp Foundation, represented the foundation. Dr. Thomas Croghan, president of the Renaissance Theater Board, Brenda Golbus, and attorney Loyal Bemiller represented the Renaissance Theater. A $2.25 million capital improvements campaign was launched in 1984 to renovate the Renaissance Theater. Making the theater ready for the theater organ was a small part of the job for architects Tim Alexander and Dan Seckel. A pit was dug under the seats to house the organ when it was not used, and a hydraulic piston for the theater organ lift was to be installed next to the new orchestra pit. A fire escape was relocated to enlarge the main chamber and make room for extra pipes. The seats, some of which were held together by duct tape, were removed and refurbished. New lighting, sound, and stage rigging equipment were purchased and overseen by Dick Spohr, the theater technical director. As the instrument was being renovated, many conversations took place between Mansfield and Los Angeles. Exact dimensions of both pipe lofts, within 1/4 inch accuracy, had to be sent to California. Templates were cut out of plastic, and Ken built simulated chambers at his shop. He had to make certain the installation would be properly planned before arriving in Mansfield. Crome actually assembled the instrument twice, once in California and again in Mansfield in the Renaissance Theater pipe lofts. The only decision the committee did not reach full agreement on was whether to paint the console white or leave it dark mahogany. It was decided white would contrast with the theater's dark stage curtains. Tom Yance carved 2 shell logos for the front of the console, which would match the interior shell motif of the Renaissance Theater. They were painted gold and placed on both sides of the front of the console. Late Friday evening, April 12, 1985, the truck with the organ shutters and their motors arrived from Indianapolis. Doug Leach, Dick Holmes, and Matt Madden, along with other committee members, joined the professionals hired by Ken Crome to help with unloading. Then, at dawn on Sunday, April 14, 1985, the long-awaited day came. The instrument and its parts, weighing 20,000 pounds, arrived in a semi-trailer. Soon, the workers began to undertake the enormous task of putting the organ back together again. The big wind line and the feed line were soldered together by Bill Johnson, Cy Nicholas, and Ed Hamblin. At the theater, Jim Hetz was busy setting the pipes and polishing the reeds. There were about 1,500 pipes, ranging in size from 6 inches to 16 feet, which would eventually fill both the pipe lofts. Don and Virginia White took trumpet pipes to Oroville to be repaired at the Shantz Organ Company. Bill Cans helped install the blower pipes. When Ken began to place the plywood floors in the pipe loft, Bill Johnson suggested that Ken use tap cons to save time and labor. Bill's suggestion saved the crew an entire day of work. Ken was definitely impressed with the help of the committee. When Ken left Mansfield, he offered Bill and Cy a job installing another theater organ, which they graciously declined. For the next 3 weeks, work went on feverishly 14 or more hours a day. Ken Chrome's assistants cleaned, adjusted, and checked various parts of the instrument. The committee members watched the experts so they would be able to repair the organ in the future. The last phase of the installation was the voicing of the organ. Lynn Larson came to help with this job. Finally, all the work was completed on May 4, 1985. The entire cost of the project was $105,000. The Fran and Warren Rupp Foundation had given much more than the theater organ to the Renaissance Theater. The gift of the theater itself had also come from them, for the Rupps were the anonymous donors of the Ohio Theater, which became known as the Renaissance Theater. A dedication concert was held on May 17, 1985, with a capacity crowd present to hear Lynn Larson at the console. He had learned to play the theater organ on this very instrument when it was in the Kearns home and had recorded many albums on it. Mr. Larson felt a personal tie to the instrument. In the audience were Fran and Warren Rupp, quietly observing the smiles and comments made by everyone who attended the concert. The Renaissance Theater organ was featured on the cover of the November-December 1985 issue of Theater Organ magazine. According to the accompanying article, it is one of the best-known studio organs of them all. The National Theater Organ magazine called this organ one of the best 10 theater organ installations in the world. Jack Kindler said it is one of 3 produced for recording purposes, so it was made for tonal quality, not volume. Since the Renaissance Theater is a small theater, the combination was ideal. Finally, it seemed that all the work was over. But actually, the work never stops with the theater organ. There's always something that must be repaired, tuned, or changed. A player piano arrived on November 19, 1985, and was added to the instrument. The sound of air moving through the wind lines was quickly silenced by the addition of a baffle box designed by Ken and built by Bill, Cy, and Ed. Jack Kindler, Ed Hamblin, and Matt Madden spent one entire night fixing the combination action so that the organ would be working the next day for a professional theater organist. The Renaissance Theater Organ Search Committee and the Installation Committee completed their tasks. Both groups were combined and renamed the Renaissance Theater Organ Association. The first president of the Theater Organ Association was Jack Kindler. New members continue to join the Renaissance Theater Organ Association, adding their special talents. Members drive from as far away as Barberton and Akron for the regular monthly meetings. Many members play the instrument. Others continue to make the necessary repairs or serve on committees. Since the dedication, theater organists from all over the world have performed on this instrument, and great theater organists will continue to present concerts in the Renaissance Theater on this mighty Wurlitzer. The organ is also used for preludes to movies and live shows, for silent film accompaniment, and for theater organ concerts. While researching the information for this presentation, a letter from Warren E. Rupp dated September 6, 1985 was discovered. The letter stated, "I would like a special favor. To complete the history of the organ from the time it went into storage in 1975 until 1985. I would like a list of the members of the Organ Search Committee headed by Brenda Golbus, and the agreement by Fran and me to pay for the instrument and its restoration, as well as final installation. List the names of the volunteers who were dedicated in unloading the instrument and helping install the chests, etc., and those people who helped with the voicing. I will make several copies of all this information with instructions that this information be kept in permanent files so that people in the future will know how the organ came to be in our possession." Thus, a script was written, photos were gathered, and memories were rekindled. The Renaissance Theater organ is more than a musical instrument. It is a legacy and testament to the generosity, persistence and hard work of a handful of people with a vision and a dream.